Modern Christian motherhood often confuses busy with holy. Wow, what a bold statement to open up my podcast with, right? This is your first time listening. Welcome, because we're not afraid to confront the controversy here. We go deep, but with love, right? We aren't afraid to step on toes a little bit and just dive right in. And I tell you, ladies, this simple sentence has been so convicting in my life for a very long time when we would address busyness and holiness, but specifically when it comes to motherhood and Christian motherhood, which to me, let me just define that real quick, is basically if you're a mom who loves Jesus, who wants to point her kids to Jesus, that's what Christian motherhood is. It's not about the moms who take their kids to church to try to be good people. It's all about the quality of the soul, right? Where are you pointing your kids? Where are you pointing your soul? And with this kind of toxic, I would even declare it, love for being busy in the US culture, I had never felt the realness of that statement that I opened the podcast with so much until I moved back to the home country, my home country of the US. So a little quick background. I am an American woman, born and raised in New York, lived in Florida for 10 years, lived in California for 10 years, where I was working in the entertainment industry. But I also, behind the scenes, how God put food on my table was actually through nannying. So I had the beautiful and blessed experience of nannying for over 55 kids from all kinds of different cultural backgrounds, ethnicities, parents, different kind of, gender parents, different beliefs, different values, different religions in the home, different sibling makeup. Some were only children, some there were 4 in the house. So I've had a lot of experience with children. However, nothing fully prepares you for your own motherhood like having your own kids. And it's just so surreal because one thing that I feel other countries are known for, specifically Europe, better, or let's not even label it better or worse, but just different than the US, is that I knew moving to Europe that Europeans are known for being a little bit slower. I don't mean mentally, I mean just in their everyday lifestyles, that they put more of an emphasis on spending more quality time versus the quantity of time or things that you do with your children or your family. And I definitely experienced that. I experienced that in my husband's family, who are born and raised Belgians, and the families around us. I remember when I first moved to Belgium, I would have such a hard time adjusting to, the 6-7 hour long meals that we would have on a Sunday afternoon. I had to really pace myself and realize, that sometimes you're going to show up and you're just going to talk for several hours before the food gets cooking. And then I started packing snacks in the diaper bag for my son and for myself, just an adjustment. And yet it caused me during that time to think about, why am I expecting to be so busy? Why am I uncomfortable with almost being comfortable with just sitting and talking and relaxing, right? I mean, in today's whirlwind of play dates, right? Pinterest perfect birthday parties and meticulously planned Bible study sessions even, it's really easy to blur the lines between being busy and being holy, right? Because there are so many things that we moms can look at and think about and even pursue with a holiness objective, having the mindset that we are doing this for the Lord and for others. But sometimes the lines can get really blurry, and that's exactly what we're going to dive into today. So I hope you stick around. I hope you have an open heart, open mind, and that you're ready to dive into this very worthy topic, because you are worth it, mama, and so is your heart as a mom. Let's get into it.
The Energized Mama Podcast, a place where we explore together how to raise those littles to know the Lord while growing in your own intimacy with Jesus, learning how to keep your energy while handling the inevitable stress, and rediscovering yourself outside of motherhood. It is possible. Let's do it together.
Mommy? Mama? Energized Mama. Yeah. You might do.
Do you ever feel like the modern Christian mom narrative seems to whisper louder and louder each day that our worth in God's eyes, and perhaps even our own, is measured by the length of our to-do list and, say, the perfection of our sourdough starters? But really, mama, have you ever thought, is this actually what God truly desires for us? Yeah, it can be really hard, right? In this culture where it's better to be served, or it's better to serve than to be served. It's better to give rather than receive. It can be really hard to have that balance and to know when we're overdoing it and when those lines, can crisscross some. I think there's also seasons, right? Just like there's seasons of motherhood, and a lot of this coincides with seasons of your serving or of your busyness, or what your aim is to be holy in your life, depending on the needs of your family and your children, how that continues to ebb and flow and change. The one constant in life, right, is that we know that things will continue to change. But the one thing that doesn't change is God and his desire for you, for us as mothers. And I am a big wordsmith. Like, I can get real nerdy when it comes to words. And this really became something that became really prevalent in my household, because as many of you know, especially as I share in the beginning of this episode, that my family were multicultural. My husband and my bonus girl, they are both born and raised in Belgium. Their first language is Dutch. And then we've got our two little boys kind of sandwiched in the middle. They are born in Belgium, first couple years in Belgium, but they're also American citizens, and I'm the American citizen. So we've got this really beautiful mix of culture and language in our home. And so we always are going back to the root of the word. We're always going back to not just the root of the word as in the word of God, as in the Bible, but just words, like especially in the English language, which is the main language spoken in our home now. It's really important for us to be on the same page when it comes to when we're having communication, when we're talking about something, especially when it's something serious, to actually define and make sure that we're all on the same page as far as what the word meaning is. I really believe, ladies, this is a free tip for your marriage, is to make sure that when you and your husband are discussing something, especially something that's sensitive, something that's hard to talk about, make sure first and foremost that as best as you can, that you guys over communicate what you guys both believe about that concept. My husband and I, we used to coach couples in multicultural blended families, and one philosophy that we really stand by is over communicating. It doesn't mean beat over a dead horse. It just means that when you feel like you've communicated about something enough, communicate again. There's not enough communication, I feel, going on in most households. And sometimes even within our own hearts, we can get so lost and caught up in the busy that we don't even realize that either we're not communicating at all with the Holy Spirit, or we are communicating and not realizing all this communication, almost all these beliefs are going on in our heart. So I thought a great place for us to start today. Who are we kidding? We've already started, right, ladies? But maybe to continue on, to keep going, is I've brought up this discussion about busyness and holiness, right? Like, how are we confusing it? And sometimes it's because we are forgetting the main definition behind both of these words. So let's take a step back. Let's get the definition so then we can move forward to help you better see and receive what I'm doing in my everyday life, even the things I'm doing in church for my community. Is it to be busy, or is it to be holy? And where's my heart at? And only you can judge the condition of your heart. So there's no judgment here today. The best thing you can do is, as you are learning this through this episode and receiving things, is ask the Holy Spirit, hey, help me figure out, where am I struggling? Where is this in my life that I can do better? So first and foremost, let's start with the B word, busy. Okay. So busy means, according to the dictionary, having a great deal to do, basically. So it reminds me of to-do lists, right? That could be easily equated to your busy list. And that's when it's being used as an adjective. So a describing word, right? So when you would say, I have a really busy day, you'd be saying, I have a great deal to do today, right? Or next week is very busy. You have a great deal to do, right? Which is ironic because that's what a verb is, right? It's that action word. But when you describe or you define busy as a verb, it actually means keeping occupied. And it's funny because I remember my grandma talking to me about, remaining occupied. Like, it's like, what is that old saying, that says, idle hands are the devil's handiwork. So I think that, came from a good, honest purpose, right? Is when you don't have anything purposeful, at least maybe that you're doing, or you're not using your gifts that I can see that the enemy and even just ourselves can then pull it in a wrong direction. But in that sense of, if we look back at that statement, it doesn't necessarily mean, though, that the counterpart, the other side of, oh, so, well, if I don't keep my hands idle, but if I keep them busy all the time, does that actually mean holy? Because let's look at what holy means. So holy is described as, means, the definition is dedicated or consecrated to God for or a religious purpose, or also known as sacred. Wow. That really blew my mind when I realized that holiness means sacred. And I guess they could be seen one and the same, but can you imagine if you brought the word sacred to your motherhood? Because that is truly what God calls you to be and to have with your motherhood, is a holiness, not a busyness. God doesn't want you to have a busy motherhood. He wants you to have a holy motherhood, which means consecrated. And consecrated, since we're on a roll here with the definitions, consecrated, yes, is something that means set apart. So setting something apart, maybe setting your motherhood or your moments away from the busyness of the world is a perfect way that you can dedicate your motherhood to the Lord. Hey mama, I've been on a quest to find the perfect gut health drink, and I have some good news for you. I've finally struck gold with Cabana Cultures. If you, like me, have a sensitive digestive system, especially postpartum, you'll appreciate how they've tailored their coconut water kefir to be gentle yet effective. What really sets Cabana Cultures apart is their approach. These drinks are non-carbonated and feel more like a refreshing juice than any fermented beverage I've tried before. The lack of fizz and the light texture make it super easy to drink, especially if fizzy drinks tend to upset your stomach. Flavor-wise, they've hit the nail on the head. It's low in sugar, but rich in tangy citrus and coconut flavors that are pronounced yet not overwhelming. I personally love their coconut lime. It's a delicious departure from the often too sweet or overly sour options out there. Every sip feels like a mini escape to the beach, making me look forward to my daily gut health ritual. Their commitment to, air quotes, healthy gut and happy life isn't just a slogan. It's evident in every single bottle. Packed with live probiotics and essential electrolytes, these brews support hydration and overall wellness without compromising on taste or gut comfort. So for anyone looking to support their digestive health with a product that's crafted with care and tailored for sensitive systems, Cabana Cultures might just be exactly what you've been searching for. It's truly more than a health drink. It's a daily treat that supports my well-being from the inside out. And they've been so gracious to offer my listeners 20% off your first order. Just head on over to cabanacultures.com and use the code ENERGIZED at checkout. Now, when we look at the heart of biblical teachings, there's a lot more emphasis on the being rather than the doing. I'm not sure if you've heard someone say this to you, but hey, you're a human being, not a human doing. And I had someone say that to me a few years ago because I've always been caught up in being productive. Like, I am a go-getter. I've been raised by a family of go-getters, and I have a lot of pride in that. I like that, I was always taught to be productive with my time, to be useful, to use my gifts. But I remember actually being back in college. This is so funny, a little story time. So at my small Christian university, they gave the opportunity to a select group of us seniors that were graduating in the spring. Back in 2010 was when I graduated college. They gave us an opportunity to write basically like a giving back, a devotional or some words of wisdom we wanted to leave to the younger student body. And it definitely ages it, is that I remember it was a mass email we would send to the entire school list. And when I prayed and thought about what is something that I can leave with this student body, what is something that I can talk to these, younger students about? And mind you, I was only 22 myself. And as of this recording, I am a little bit older than that. I am 36 now. So when I think back on 14 years ago, I remember distinctly because it's something that I haven't stopped struggling with. I would say in a way it's a little bit of a thorn in my side, something I have to continually dedicate to the Lord, and something that I've continued to work out as I am being discipled by friends around me in my motherhood is to make sure that productivity does not define me, to make sure that I don't get lost in productivity and how much did I get done today, that my worth, that my value as a woman and as a homemaker and as a mother and as a wife isn't determined by what I do and how much I do, right? I'm continually reminded of Mary, good old, beautiful, sweet Mary, right? Sitting at Jesus's feet. She chose what was better over Martha, her sister Martha. If you're not familiar with the story, she was in a flurry of activity, right? It's like Jesus was coming to eat and dine at their home, and all Martha was focusing on was, all the preparations and putting together the perfect meal. And I can just imagine her setting the table, wanting everything to look nice, to smell nice. And all Mary wanted to do when Jesus arrived was just be with him, be present, sit at his feet. I mean, can you imagine if just one day this week when your husband came home, hey, you can sit at his feet if you like, play with your kiddos, or just sit with him instead of worrying about prepping him the perfect meal or having all his clothes done or making sure all the toys are away, because there is time for that, of course. But, and to say this, right, I think one of the biggest hiccups I always have with this notion is, or the big but that always comes up in my mind is like, yeah, but those things need to get done, right? And sometimes it can feel like, mamas, if we don't do it, then they're never going to get done and work's just going to pile up. So of course, this story isn't to undermine the value of all of our daily tasks and all the love that you pour into them, but more to question, like more to ask ourselves that when does the hustle shadow the holy, right? When does it overshadow the holy? Maybe would be a more appropriate way to say it. The early morning prayers whispered over a steaming cup of coffee, the moments of grace, as say we forgive the spilled milk for the umpteenth time, the silent prayers breathed out as we fold another load of laundry, the Bible verses that we speak over our children after they've just had a big blowout, whether it be a fight or a big temper tantrum. These are the instances where holiness really nestles itself quietly within the busy. It's in the unseen, the uncelebrated, where our hearts align with God's, where the sacred meets the mundane. If you look back at Jesus's life, if you look at his ministry, that only took place about 3 years, while he was here on this side of heaven. And there were a lot of mundane things that he did, and what's amazing is I just finished the book of John, and I'm not sure if you've ever read the book of John cover to cover, but literally the last 2 verses in John are John and potentially theologians think possibly some other followers of Jesus helped finish the book of John, but they basically exclaimed and said how no book in the world, including this one, this letter, could contain all the things that Jesus did. So I think that when I've read that in the past, I've always thought about the big miraculous works that Jesus must have done, the healings that we just haven't gotten a chance to hear about or see. But then I think about the things that he also did that weren't probably written because maybe they did seem too mundane. When you think of the things that he did, how he prepped himself for the cross, can you imagine how many times he must have just bowed his head and said, Lord, I need you? Thought about how many times he went to the Father. I mean, we have some recorded opportunities or circumstances, experiences in the Bible that Jesus did step away, right? That we know about because his disciples wrote about it. But imagine how many times he probably did, he must have done, that we didn't see, that we didn't hear about. So don't ever forget about those still quiet moments as a mom and how much they really do make a difference, and there's going to be days where you forget, or you're just caught up in the busy, or you're just overwhelmed, and that's okay too. That's part of, the grace upon grace that the Lord gives you, is he gives you his grace, but you also have to receive the grace and give yourself grace. So mamas, it's truly the true essence of Christian motherhood. It's not about the flawlessness of our execution, right? But it's in the resilience of our spirits, the depth of our love for our kids and our husbands, and our capacity for that grace, not just to give it, but to receive it as well. So my prayer, and maybe even just my commission for you this week, is to unshackle yourself from the chains of just perpetual busyness. Just take one thing off your list this week. What can you do? What can you look at and say, this week I'm going to give myself a break. I'm going to make myself less busy, and I'm going to focus on making more moments sacred. Let's find holiness in the pauses, in the breaths between tasks, the silent prayers, the laughter-filled messes, right? There's nothing you have to actually add into your day to have your day be more for God or more sacred or more holy. It's already there. It's in the heart of our lived out faith that we truly encounter God. So, Mama, as I bring this episode to a close, I want to ask you a question, maybe 2 or 3 questions. They're rhetorical, so think of them right now as I ask you. How will you encounter him, Jesus, differently this week? In what moments in your busyness will you turn your heart towards him instead of the next task? Will you take courage and choose to enjoy more sacred moments in your motherhood? The choice is ultimately yours. The choice is ours, because I am right there with you and you are not alone. Speaking of, if you would like a strong, tight-knit community where there's other mamas just like you who want to position their hearts towards the Lord, who want to grow and raise these little ones into Jesus-loving souls that love Jesus but love others like him, love others for him, come join my free community group. We are growing. We are starting to shape up some really exciting and great things, and we want you to be a part of it. I have the link right here in the show notes that can link you up to the free group, and we would just love to have you. If this episode blessed you, I want to encourage you to do 2 things. One, it's all about sharing. Sharing is caring. So please share this with another mama who you know needs this message, who needs this encouragement in her life. And then number 2, I love encouragement too, and I would love to hear how this episode hit your heartstrings. I'd love to hear how it helped you, how it encouraged you. So if you could go to Apple Podcasts, scroll down to the middle page after you've listened to this episode and leave me a review, that would really mean a lot. And then I can see and get this feedback and let me know what episodes are hitting you and helping you more than others, and continue to create a podcast that is not for me, but it's for you. Other mamas growing and raising their children and raising themselves into being these strong spiritual leaders in their household, and just being ultimately that beautiful daughter of God that the Lord calls each of us to. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Energized Mama podcast. Here's a big dika knuffel, which means big hug, virtual hug to each and every one of you, and I will see you on the next episode. God bless, Mama.